Welcome to this lesson on introducing SolidWorks. So today we are going to look at how to launch SolidWorks, the SolidWorks user interface, how to create a sketch, and how to use one of the very basic tools, which is called the extrude tool. So how do we start SolidWorks? You probably noticed when SolidWorks installed, you have all these different components because SolidWorks is quite a complicated program. We are not going to use most of these. So we have Composer, which is just really a viewer, electrical, drawings, um, visualizer. So this is the one that we can just view for SolidWorks files. And if your SolidWorks did not install correctly, this is the only thing you get is just the viewer. What we want is SolidWorks 2021 up here. So there's several ways to launch it. Easiest way is to double click on it. These other icons you can delete, or while we're launching it, you can just hit the Windows key to bring up the launch menu and type in SolidWorks. It should bring that up there. Or if you want, you can hit the Windows key, and I have it on my launch menu along with a lot of the other tools that I use. So I can just launch it from there as well. Okay, SolidWorks is open now, and I minimize that. So I'm going to relaunch it so you guys can see what it looks like when it launches. But it basically gives us a menu for if we want to open up a part to start with. We don't really need that. At this point, we're going to go through some more of the interface before we start looking at the parts. So it should launch here in just a second. Obviously, SolidWorks is a complicated program. It takes a while to launch. So, okay, it launches with this window, and I've already made a part. So it's down here is to open my recent parts. You probably just see these parts, assemblies, and drawings up here. We're going to close this out. You probably also see this window over here saying that we need an update. So don't get the update right now, but you probably should get the update at some point. We don't need that window right now, so I'm just going to squish it over to the side. There are kind of some cool tools over here that we will use in the future. But I want to change this window size so that the zoom toolbar is not hiding what I want to talk about. So resize it just a little bit. You also might have gotten an error that says it needs more memory. If the program is ever sluggish on your computer, you might want to close some of the programs that are particularly memory hogs, like browsers, and just have basically the minimum amount of stuff open while you're actually drawing on SolidWorks. So the main menu is up here. It does hide the traditional like Windows menu, but if you hover over this little arrow, you get this traditional menu, your files, your views, and your tools. And so most everything can be found in here, but the easier way to do it is usually to use the ribbons. So here's the home button, and then a new part button, and here's your open. And then if we have any files open, we can save them. Another important tool is this stoplight thing. This is going to be our rebuild menu. So if we make substantial changes to our sketch or our drawings, then we're going to want to have it rebuilt and recalculate things. And so we'll show you that when we get to that. And then the other thing is the options menu up here. So also in that initial screen, it might have asked you to log in. You can create an account on the login screen. You can create an account on solidworks.com and log in. It's not really required at this point. So what are we going to do? First thing we got to do is start a part. So we need a workspace. We can't work, and this is just a blank document. It wants to know what kind of document we want to work on. So also in SolidWorks, anything you hover over will give you a kind of a quick view of what that is. So it'll give you a kind of a little hint. So I'm going to go to this part menu. If I just hit it, I bring back up that original screen that you saw. Or if I hit the little down arrow, I can select new as well. So here I want a new part. A part is an individual object, a little individual standalone object, where an assembly is we're putting different objects in the same environment to be able to say test how those parts fit together. And then a drawing is like what we worked on last week. We were making a projections so that the thing can be manufactured. But we can't do an assembly or drawing unless we have a part. So the thing to start with is a part. Also, this is access to the SOLIDWORKS tutorials, so you can learn even more than I'm teaching you about how to use SOLIDWORKS by using their built-in tutorials. Okay, so we have part selected and hit OK. So now it's generating our actual workspace. So here we come. Okay, so this is the workspace, the part screen. So we have several different aspects of it. Our main menu is still up here at the top. And then here we have our ribbon, which has all the tools that we're going to be working with. And we'll primarily be working with the features and the sketch menus. We will do a little bit in the simulation over here, but we really won't be using any of these other tabs. The next part is this view toolbar, which we're going to go into more detail when we get a little farther. And then here is the feature manager. So this is where we have access to all parts of our feature, as well as being able to do things like recolor it and do kind of fun things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and maximize that. And then another key aspect of engineering is that this is our axis system, so X, Y, and Z. And here is a trimetric view. We can change that in the options menu to be isometric, but trimetric is really the preferred view. Okay, now we're going to go make up and look at this view toolbar more extensively. So here we have zoom to fit. So if you've zoomed in on a part and you want to zoom, or you've zoomed way out, you can get it to perfectly fit the screen. Then this is your zoom to area. You highlight an area, make a rectangle, and zoom in on that area. You can also use your mouse wheel to zoom if you have a wheel on a mouse. Here's a previous view, so you can go back to where you were. Section view, so you can look on the inside of a part. Dynamic animation views, we will not be using that very much. I don't know if I've ever used that one. View orientation, and you notice this view orientation has this little drop down menu. So we can select the orientation in multiple different ways. We can go over here and select one of the views, and it tells us this is the front, top, right, and isometric views. And then, or we can select the view by hitting this down, hovering over this down area, and then you can select a specific view. You don't have to select it from the box on the middle of the screen. Then we have how solid our object we want to be. We can have a complete solid object. We can have it shaded. We can have it hidden lines, so just lines and not really shaded. Or we can go all the way basically to a stick figure. Here's our eyeball with a bunch of different views. We won't be using these much. You can play with them once we get a part in here. And then this is a edit appearance. So we can change the color of our object. So we can make it look like wood. We can look like metal. You can make it any color you want. And then here's a change of background. So if you want a cool picture of your object, like if you're making a chair and you want to put it in a room, you can do so right there. And then this is view settings. So we have different views. And then over here in our features manager, we have the feature design tree. So that tells us all the different parts that we have to our drawing. Then we have the property manager. And so that's what we're going to use to edit the actual sketch or tool. The configuration manager, dim expert, and there's so many tabs that you can scroll over. So we don't really need the rest of them, but you can hover over them to see what their names are. So the first thing we're going to do is basically make a nameplate, something you would put on your desk, something you would put on your door, something that has your name on it, because it's going to be pretty simple and we get to use the tools that just basically get started with SOLIDWORKS. So as you open the tool, it probably said to, as you open the part, it probably said what unit system you want to use. IPS stands for inches, pounds, and seconds. MMGS stands for millimeters, grams, and seconds. So we can see what units we're using down here in the lower right. And so you can select which one to use, and you can even edit those units, which brings us to the setting menu. The other way to get into that same setting is to go up to the top toolbar and hit the gear. You go to document properties and hit units. So like anything else, lots of different ways to do it. And here we can change the units on MMGS. So if you had already selected something that wasn't MMGS when that popped up, there is a way to change the template, but you would have to follow the directions that are in the written up directions. Just be careful that, so you can save a new template now with these new units, but when you actually save the part, you want to save it as not the template. But how you change the template is you go up to that, edit the units, we select MMGS, and then we go up to the file and save as, and then go to part template, and automatically saves it in the right file. So basically just save it as part template, overwrite that part template. Say, yes, I want to replace it. But now we want to start our drawing. So the first thing we want to do, especially if you did that, and we want to do is save as, and we're no longer saving a part template. So make sure that we're in just SOLIDWORKS parts, and make sure you change the folder up here to like your documents folder. And if you haven't already done so, now's a good time to make like your SOLIDWORKS folder. And where did it go? So you notice that it has some automatically generated. And I am going to call this name plate and hit save, and make sure it's saving as a SOLIDWORKS part. It's important to have the right file type. So go ahead and hit save. Okay, so now we are ready to draw. All SOLIDWORKS drawings will start, well, most of the time SOLIDWORKS drawings will start with a sketch. So I'm going to go up here to the ribbon and hit the sketch tab. And I want to hit that I want to make a sketch. You notice that over here it pops up all of our different planes. So really you can do this on any plane. I chose to do it on the top plane because I'm going to be basically looking down at the nameplate. So I'm going to select this top plane, and then it's going to rotate into a projection view. And then all you see here is the origin. Our axes are still down here, so I'm drawing on the XZ axis, and there is my origin. Okay, now I get to pick the shape I want to draw. So up here are all the different types of lines we can draw. Basically, we have rectangles and lines and circles and squiggles, and it's actually called spline, ovals, pentagons. And so most of them have a little push down menu where even the square has, the rectangle has different options. We can define a square based on the corners. We can define a square based on the center. We can rotate it. We can do a parallelogram. The circle has different options. You can define the circle based on the center or the perimeter. So we're going to start with the center rectangle because I want my drawing centered. And you now see that the feature window has switched to looking at a different tab. So based on the rectangle. And so here, if you selected the wrong rectangle up there, you can change which rectangle we have down here. So again, we want the center rectangle. And you notice that now my cursor is a pencil in my drawing space. And so I want to center my rectangle on the origin. So as I hover around the origin, you notice that it pops up that little yellow box that says that we're on that location, as well as highlights the origin in a little orange dot. And as I move away from the origin, if I'm in line with the origin, that little yellow box on the lower right of the pencil changed to a white line saying that I'm in line with the origin. These are basically predefining reference points. And as I go up, those dashed lines appeared again, indicating that I'm in line with that location. I want to select the origin, and so we have that little yellow box next to the pencil. And so I'm just going to click my mouse once and then drag my mouse away. You can drag it in any direction, up, down, left, right, doesn't really matter. We're just going to put in a rectangle. And to fix that rectangle, I just click the mouse one more time. You notice that it has X and Y coordinates on there. And then this changed as well. So here we can add additional relationships. We're not going to use that right now. We'll go into that in the future. And here it gives us the parameters for a rectangle. I would not change the units here on how big a rectangle is. We're going to define that by specifically dimensioning that in a minute. But note that there is a slider here, so you can slide up and down. And the other option we'll be using in the future is for construction. That's if you're drawing a line just so that you can basically put in dimensions and relate a new feature to an old one. But again, we'll be using that in the future. Okay, so I'm done with my rectangle. And so I need to hit the green check mark to close this dialog and go back to the part feature. And so now it changes color a little bit and I have the rectangle defined. So, but it's not completely defined because it's just a rectangle of random size. So we need to figure out what size we want to make this rectangle. So to size everything, and every single one of your drawings needs to be dimensioned. You won't get full credit for your drawing unless the dimensions are there and correct based on the drawings that you're being given. So to dimension it, I go up to the Smart Dimension tool. And for a shape like a rectangle, there's two ways to do this. I'm going to dimension this side first. And so I can hover over the side. You see that side turns orange as I'm hovering over it, indicating that I'm about to select it. And so I want to make the nameplate 50 millimeters by 200 millimeters. So this is a shorter dimension. And so all I did was click on it when it was orange, and then I can pull out this dimension label. And I can put that anywhere I want. So pick a spot reasonably far away that you can see the numbers and click there. And now it brings up this dialog box asking for the dimensions. So there I just need to type in 50. Since we're in the MMS system, you don't really even need to type in millimeters. You just hit enter or hit the check mark there. You notice that now this dimension dialog has changed, the 50 millimeters in here. And so we'll go over more of the options as we get more deep into SolidWorks. But SolidWorks is pretty smart. It's a computer program. You don't even have to type it in millimeters. You can type in, say, 1.96 inches, and it will automatically translate. So obviously that wasn't quite 50 millimeters, so it did do the conversion automatically to millimeters. But since we're working in millimeters, we just type in 50. And again, you don't even need the millimeters. It just assumes that you're working in your pre-selected dimensions. Okay, so now we're done with that. Again, we hit the check mark. And now we want to dimension the other side. So to dimension the other side, we hit the Smart Dimension button. And for something like a rectangle, there's another way. And so to dimension it, so we can highlight this side. And if you click that and hold down the control key, you can also select the other side, and then that selects the that wide dimension. So, and if you want to quit that, you didn't select it right, you just hit the escape key and it undoes that. Hit the escape key twice. Okay. But I can also just grab that edge. You notice it turned orange, and now I can pull down this dimension. It's 167. I don't want it to be 167. I want it to be 200. And so you can also adjust this after you've made your part and get your name on there. We also have this reverse direction button, so you can put it on the other side. So you can play with that, but that's where I want the dimensions. Okay, hit the check mark. Now I got my part dimensioned. You notice now here in my feature menu, I have this new sketch. It's been added. So this helps us to be able to select different parts of our sketch. So also, if I select my part, you notice that there's another menu in here that we can use to select the part as well. So sometimes we'll use this one because it's more convenient because we're doing something over here. And sometimes we'll use that. Notice that when no part is selected, that menu is not there, whereas it always is present over there. Okay, the next thing we need to do is actually make this some thickness. Right now, it has 0 thickness. It is only on the XZ plane, and not in the Y direction at all. So in order to make it actually three-dimensional, we need to add that third dimension. To do that, we use the extrude feature. And so where the extrude comes from is basically that's how you like make pasta. If you've ever seen pasta being made with a tool, like for instance, you attach to your mixer, it pushes the pasta through a screen and extrudes it. You probably also did it as a kid with Play-Doh, that you push pasta with like a syringe shaped thing through a shape to make that shape. So there's the extrude, and here it shows you a little video on what the extrude is. So this is like the main tool in SOLIDWORKS, which is why it is highlighted. So notice none of the other ones are highlighted, but we really want to have our objects selected. So we can select it by saying selecting sketch one, or we can select that object by selecting it over here. So, but that pops up the properties. So want to make sure that that sketch is selected. And then we're going to do extrude boss base. And you notice it turns into an isometric view again. And so now we can decide how far we want to extrude it. And so we just want to extrude it 2 millimeters. So I'm going to type in 2 millimeters here, so I can highlight the whole thing, or just change it to 2 millimeters. So you can type in the units or not. And again, you can type in any units you want. And then we want to figure out what direction. Blind means just go 2 millimeters up, and that's all you go to. Up to vortex means just up to the next thing. So if we want to draw up to the next object that's already in there, we can do that. Up to a surface, offset from a surface, up to body, and midplane. And during the course of the semester, we'll be using all these different options to get the parts exactly how we want. We can also switch direction. So instead of going up, it can go down. And if I zoom in on this, I'm just using my scroll wheel to zoom in. We can also right click on the part and hit zoom pan and pan it over. Okay, so hopefully now you can see that. So we can flip the direction. So it can go here, that you see that yellow part is coming up from that bottom plane. If I switch directions, it's going down into the bottom plane. I want to go up, so I'm going to switch it back. We can also have a second direction, so we can add this, and it can go down as well. So you can go both directions from that middle plane. So another way to make this 2 millimeters thick is to go 1 millimeter up and 1 millimeter down. That will work as well. Doesn't really matter how we do this particular part, but in some parts it might matter. So I'm going to unselect that second direction, change this back to 2. We could also have it tapered, make it more of a trapezoid, and you can define what that is. So we don't want that. So we're going to unselect that because we just want it straight up. Well, you might want to taper it for manufacturing purposes. We could also make it a thin feature, so make it more like a picture frame design. And we can figure out how big of a picture frame we want it. So instead of extruding up or down, it basically extrudes out. But we don't want that as well. The thin feature is good for like making a pipe, but we want to basically make a rectangle. So there's other options. So lots of different options we can hit. But now that we are, I think, are satisfied with where we're at, we're going to hit the check mark button and kind of fix that into place. And so now you see this has changed a little bit. And there are options we can go down here. If you right click, you get a whole bunch of options where you can edit it. Or if you just hover over it, you can, or if you just click on it, sometimes it's kind of tricky. It wants to change the name. You can name it anything you want. You can say base, call it anything you want. But if I right click, this is edit features, so I can go back in and change the extrusion. So you notice I opened my extrusion menu again. Or if I right click on it, I can edit the sketch. So I can go back to the sketch and edit that. So this is where the rebuild button comes in, saying I'm done with that. I don't need to rebuild it. So I want to go back to see I can roll it. It's not rolling for me right now. So I want to go back to that isometric view. So there's the front view again. Okay, so I think we got all of those. those are the main options we use here for what to do. We could delete it if we wanted to, but that's generally not a good idea. Okay, so now we want to put in the actual text. And if you haven't saved it, now's a good time to save it again. Go up here and hit the save button. Okay, so putting in the text. So we want to go back to sketching because we want to sketch something new. And the tool that we're going to use is the text tool. But first we got to open up our sketch. So we're opening up a new sketch. It wants us to select a surface to sketch on. So it might kind of pop up with that, might be slightly different. But I need to select that surface as the surface I want to sketch on because we want to basically print our name in there. Okay, now I can use the lettering tool. This curve thing is highlighted. Basically, you don't have to type in a straight line. You could type it on some sort of curve. So if you drew another line in there, that would be a for construction line. You could have the letters follow a squiggle. You could have it follow any kind of line. So I'm going to write my name. And then notice it's really tiny and at the origin because I didn't select where I wanted it to go exactly. So we can change that. I do not want to use the document font. I want to change the font. So unselect document font, hit the font button, and we want to change it to 15 millimeters. We can make it bold. Where's bold? You can make it bold over here to make it a little thicker. You can pick any font you want, make it something that looks like Arabic letters, nothing too fancy, but I suppose you can do whatever you want. Okay, so now it's going off to the side, so that's not very good. So basically, since that's selected, I can hit anywhere and it's going to place, I'm going to keep clicking until I find where the lower left, you notice it's putting the D about where I click. So that looks close to centered. There are tools that we're going to use in the future for how to get this thing exactly centered, but we're just going to do that's good enough for now. Okay, hit check if you're happy with that. And then what we want to do is an extrude cut. So here's our extrude cut button. If we use extrude again, we'd have it come up out of the page. What we want to do is an extrude cut. So that brings up my cut feature menu. And we have basically the same options as we did with the regular extrude. We have, but we have more. So depending on which one we do, up to surface, up to body, mid plane, through all. So we'll use those in the future. We could also reverse direction, but there's nothing to cut in the other direction. So that really doesn't make sense. We could have two directions. We could have thin features. Basically all the same options as the extrude. Right now it's set to cut all the way through. I do not want to cut all the way through. I want to cut a quarter of the way through. So I'm going to type in 0.5 millimeter as how far I actually want to cut through. Okay, so then we hit the check mark button to say we're done with that. And then we want to save it again. So go up here and set the save menu. But again, we can look at the different views. We can look at the isometric view. That's not a very good view. So I can do that from here. So there's my standard view of this thing, and I can change the what to look at the different frames. So shaded, just the edges. You can see the hidden edges or wireframe. And again, you can use your mouse button to zoom in or out. So we can see that those are cut in. And I can use this button to make everything fit or rotate to the front view. Don't actually want that one. I think we can get the right view if we go here. That one. Top. Okay, so that's back to my normal view. Okay, then you're done with that. Make sure you save it and turn it into the right place. Okay, save. I think close the program. Done.